the way Prabhupada spoke about in the future we're going to have 100 centers and books will be selling all over the world, before any of this happened, he was describing this is going to happen. They believed him, so they said, okay, we'll give you that line of credit too. But of course, we didn't have any books to give them. Prabhupada really wanted artwork in his books. So we were forced to do one reprinting of the first canto. Basically, it was just for the temple devotees and selling to bookstores. We hadn't even thought of putting them in libraries yet. We didn't start the library party until 1974. So back in 1968, we are printing this enormous quantity of 2,000 Back to Godheads a month. And we only had about 8 temples. And Prabhupada's manager of the ISKCON press, whatever you want to call it, was Brahmananda. So Prabhupada would tell Brahmananda, okay, I want you to send 500 magazines to New York. You send 500 magazines to Los Angeles. You send 250 to San Francisco. And in this way, he distributed the 2,000 magazines. And the plan was, give them out to the temples, let them somehow or other give them out on Sankirtan, collect some donations, and separate some money to pay. Now, what happened was, every penny that was collected on the streets for those magazines was being spent on the rent and on boga to make prasadam. And sometimes it was being spent, depending on where the temple was, on heating fuel, if they needed heat. And no money was ever going to Dainapan. And after a while, Dainapan started getting pretty concerned about this. And so by the end of 1968, Prabhupada had to write a letter. It was the identical letter that he sent to the temple presidents of all 8 or 10 temples, and said, here's the new plan. Brahmananda is going to send you an invoice when the Back to Godheads arrive. And I don't care if you have to go out and get a karmi job, but you're going to pay that invoice, or I can't keep printing this magazine every month. And so that's what happened. I'm not sure what job Hansaduta got in Montreal. I know that Satsarup, he got a job in Boston. He was a social worker. We all know Jayananda got a job in San Francisco, taxi driver. I mean, the devotees were going out and getting jobs because Prabhupada ordered them to pay for the Back to Godhead, and even then it was a big struggle. And by the end of 1969, we had a pretty big debt with Dainapan. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the years of struggle that Prabhupada went through. So he stops translating the 3rd canto, and here he feels this nirvisesha shunyavadi, this cloud, this void cloud that covers the world, because no one knows who God is. No one in any religion seems to know who God is. So it was as if he was hearing the soul crying out, feeling lost in this dark universe, that made Prabhupada stop writing the Srimad Bhagavatam and present a summary study of the 10th canto in the Krishna books. Monumental decision. So at the beginning of 1969, Prabhupada sends a letter to Jadharani. These are the paintings I want you to paint. There were no tapes yet. He hadn't started writing, but he was already planning the first artwork that would ever appear in one of his books. And he gave her a list of 6 paintings. And a few weeks later, he sent the next letter with the next list of 5 paintings. And then what happened is Jadharani got very, very, very sick. We didn't know what the reason was, whether it was the oil painting or the winter, whatever it was. She was so sick, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't paint. All painting stopped. In fact, Prabhupada ordered her to go to Hawaii to recover. She did not recover until the summer of '69. Now, there's one more part to this story I should tell you, which is that Prabhupada had this plan, even though he had gone to Japan to set up this line of credit with this printer. He also had this plan from his own Guru Maharaj. We should have our own printing press. We should have our own press. And he started telling devotees, I want to establish in one central place my ISKCON press. We will have all the equipment, we will have all the devotees, but I will not put this investment into a building that is a rental. It has to be a building that we own. So Prabhupada wrote a letter to all 8 or 10 temples and said, this is my plan. We're going to have a centralized ISKCON press, and amongst you big leaders, whoever can be the first to buy a building, that's where we will put our ISKCON press. And I will go there. I will stay there and write my books from there. And so this is the first transcendental competition in the history of our movement. Who can buy the first temple? And Tamal was in LA, and Jayananda is in San Francisco, and Gorsundar is in Hawaii, and Brahmananda is in New York, and someone else was in the southern states, and Hansaduta was in Montreal, and everyone is, and Kirtananda and Hayagriva are in West Virginia, and everyone's trying to buy a building and win the competition. This is going to, and have ISKCON Press. This competition lasted for 1 year. And to buy a building in those years, you probably needed between $5,000 to $10,000 US as a down payment. And then the rest would be a loan from a bank, a mortgage, they call it. But our movement had never seen that much money. I mean, we were having trouble paying for 2,000 magazines a month that cost 10 cents a magazine. Anyway, to make a very long story short, and you'll find this very interesting, Boston won this competition. And at the end of the summer of 1969, they bought the very first temple in our movement. And Satsarup was there, but the reason they won the competition was because of a brahmachari named Giriraj. His father gave him $5,000 to put down on the purchase of the temple. Giriraj is the hero of this story, just as he's one of the great heroes of your Bombay temple. That same Giriraj. When I reminded him of this so many years later, he could barely even remember. I had to remind him this is what happened. So now we have this building at 38 Beacon Place in Boston. And Prabhupada, by the way, had devotees that he had selected getting karmi jobs at printing presses, at binders, at different places in New York to learn how to run all the equipment that you need to publish a book, to print a book. Before this is how Prabhupada would always plan things out, well in advance. For the whole spring and summer of 1969, there were about 5 or 6 devotees that had these jobs. They were like apprentices in these printing operations in New York. They'd spend a month at this place, then a month at that place, and they'd go around learning the trade. We had no equipment. They had no idea where they were going to be based, but Prabhupada had them training. So he sent them all up to Boston. It's a long story how we got the money for the equipment, but that's not part of this tale. And he sent the artists up there. So now it's the October of 1969, and now the tapes are coming out, one after another. And Srila Prabhupada is telling the artists, I want to have the book ready by the end of the year. And I want, let's see, there's volume 1 and volume 2, combined together, maybe between 85 and 90 paintings. No one had ever done a painting for a book before. They had done some little sketches and drawings for Back to Godhead magazine. And they had done some paintings for the temples. They had done the Acharya paintings. They did the Panchatattva painting. They even did the Radha and Krishna and the 8 Gopi paintings. And that was our art department, and they were turning out the same paintings over and over again, and they were being shipped to the different temples in the world. So everything had to stop to do the paintings for the Krishna book. And when the artists understood what the Krishna book was supposed to be, they felt very inadequate. They felt great anxiety. Prabhupada, your vision of God as the unlimited youthful beauty of God, we don't have the skill to paint that. You are talking about something that goes beyond what the great masters of the European Renaissance produced. If you want to show that level of beauty, and we're doing little cartoons, we're childlike artists. We don't have the training. So the artists, by the way, there were 4 artists. Jadharani, Bardraj, who had been sent with his wife from Montreal, Murlidhar, who was still Bhakta Mark, who had been sent from LA, and this very nice lady, who to us was like the age of our mother, Devahuti. Prabhupada sent her from LA. So those are the 4 artists. So they were meeting amongst themselves. They wrote to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, in order for us to do this, we really need to go to school. We need to go to one of these we need to go to Italy. And we will study the Renaissance style of classical art. And we will learn to paint the way the great masters of the Western world have painted. Because Prabhupada had selected that as the style. He did not want what was very traditional in poster art of India, which was flat and 2-dimensional. He wanted 3-dimensional classical realism. He wanted the painting that if you saw it, you would immediately believe it, that it's real, not something imagined by an artist. So they had proposed to Prabhupada, let us go to the art school. And maybe after a year or two, we'll have maybe enough training that we could even attempt this. So Prabhupada wrote back. He had considered this idea and said, no, that's not how you're going to learn how to paint. I have a different way for you to learn. What is that? You are going to sit in front of your canvas. They didn't have money to buy canvases. I don't know how they came up with the money. By the way, there were no easels. You know, an artist paints on an easel. These canvases, they would stretch them, beg to get the canvas, and they would be flat on the floor, and they'd be leaning over it, or it'd be propped up on the wall, and they would be painting it, and the propping up on a wall means it's on an angle. Very awkward to paint on an angle, and very awkward to paint when it's flat on the floor and you're looking straight down. So Prabhupada said, you're going to sit in front of your canvas and you're going to practice painting 10 hours a day. Every single day of your life. You're not going to do anything else. You go to the morning program, you can take a break for prasadam, but this is it. This is your only service to me. And the whole time that you are sitting in front of that easel with no training, you're going to be sitting there in great anxiety. You are going to feel